Welcome in, everyone, to the post-game reaction show. My name is Bryce Koon here on Swarm Talk. Make sure you're locked in. Make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. You're following us over on social media as well, over on the Twitter feed, at the Crowded Booth, at Bryce_Koon, and then obviously on the Crowded Booth YouTube channel as well. We want to get you locked in there, nearing 3K subscribers. What in the world did we just watch? Wow, there's just so many different ways we could go with this, and I'll take another look at this in the coming days as we get ready for kind of a rewind look and look ahead to obviously clean old fashioned hate. There's so much that we could take away, and I want to preface it by saying this: a lot of people know that we are going to talk about the scope of the game and then the 30,000 foot view. That's what we do on this show. It's for some people, it's not for other people. So we are going to be critical, even in wins. We are going to praise when things go well. But I think one of the biggest things that you see in this game, and I'm going to start with a positive, is you survive. And you've shown an ability to survive in just games where you really shouldn't have won. I mean, this is a completely, you almost blew this in terms of defensively in that second half. I mean, North Carolina State ran for 208 yards in the second half on you. You predicated yourself on being a team that could stop the run, and you could not do that. But the biggest thing is you won the game, you found a way to get through it, and at the end of the day, it's just going to be a W on the win column. That's important. You advance to 7-4. You clinch back-to-back winning seasons in over a decade. So that to me is kind of the first point I want to make in tonight's show. Like, we're going to keep this quick. We're going to keep it rocking and rolling. We appreciate over 200 people, watching here. But this was kind of just one of those games where everything was ugly. Nothing came easy to this group, but you saw some things that you can build upon. So the first point, like I just said, you found a way to win an ugly game. That's what you have to do. That's what you have to be able to win games where you don't bring your A+ effort. You probably didn't bring your B+ effort. That to me is, in my opinion, one of the things when you kind of look at this contest, it is what it is. It wasn't necessarily pretty all the time, but you made a way to find and be there at the end to give yourself a chance to win the football game. Now, a couple of things that just stood out to me in this game. NC State tallied 400 total yards. They ran for 253. They averaged 8.7 yards per rush. One of the calling cards was that this defense had improved in terms of limiting running the football. And I told you coming into this game that was going to be the battle. Georgia Tech's front seven against NC State's offensive line and run game. When you took out the quarterback, who, oddly enough, when you kind of look at what he was able to do in the running game, he was their leading rusher. Bailey 3 touchdowns and 83 yards. But coming into the game, when you took out his empty carries per se, this was a guy who averaged, a run game that averaged over 5 yards per carry. So, they ran the ball. They averaged 8.7 yards on you. They had a long of 53. That was obviously Hollywood Smothers, touchdown run there towards the end. Look, NC State kind of did what they wanted with you offensively. I felt like Georgia Tech got bullied up front on both sides of the football at times. It was just inconsistent in their ability to play that, gap integrity. They didn't do that for a full 60 minutes. That's a hard thing to do, but they just weren't able to do that. Whether that's coaching or personnel, I'll leave that kind of up to you, and we'll talk about that more in the rewind episode. But they ran the ball kind of how they wanted to, and it allowed them to get back in the football game. I mean, you got to go back. I mean, this game was, I don't want to say it was over, but it was, 16-7 in the third quarter. And North Carolina State hadn't shown a lot of life. There wasn't a lot of pizzazz from their offense. Bailey, he threw 3 interceptions. I felt like he grew up in this game. You got to see 2 true freshman quarterbacks. But all that to say is that they put up 22 points in the fourth quarter, and your defense held on for as long as they can, and then they just kind of started to combust. I don't know if it's a fact of guys got tired. I thought that the second level of the defense played pretty poorly in the run game, couldn't fit gap scheme at all, getting caught up in the mix and the shuffle as offensive linemen were getting to the second level. So to the point of what I'm saying is, and we'll flip it over here to Georgia Tech in a second, you got dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. Georgia Tech averaged 3.3 yards a carry. That's not really acceptable. And if you if you're going to be a team that your calling card is going to be to run the ball, which you go all the way back to August, and that's what Brent Key said, one of those things he wanted to see. You have to be able to play better as a team in the interior of the offensive line. And we talked about coming out of God knows how many bye weeks we've talked about with this team, but it's one of those things where I just think you kind of sit here and you say to yourself, like, that's not the way you wanted to play. But like I said, you won the football game. All right, let's talk a little bit about Georgia Tech offensively, though, in this game. You got to start with Aaron Philo. I mean, look, this is a kid who he's got guts. He has poise, and I think that he is a very good talent. I think that he is a very well maintained in the sense of his mental capability during the game. He processes well. He threw the pick. We could sit here and split the atom on whether he threw it too hard or what it is. Hit the guy in the hands, and I think that you would kind of tell. I would tell anybody that if it hits you in the hands, you got to catch the football. But Philo to me was impressive. 19 to 33, 265. Did not have a passing touchdown. Did throw in that interception. 7 for 57. But it's more about you can't look at just the box score of what Philo did in this game. I think this is really more of what he was able to do in terms of settling down, in terms of going after kind of what you wanted to see them go after, and to be attacking and be aggressive, be decisive at the quarterback position. It's something that with Haynes King's injury and then Zach Pyron, scuffling, they didn't really have that. And I think Philo brought that dynamic in this game. And it's going to make him a fan favorite. It's going to make for a lot of people want him to start next weekend in Athens, because I think there's a lot of validity to the fact that you should probably let Philo start next week. I get it's a night game, but he's going back to Athens, the Athens area, I should say. He's going back there. So, I don't know. That's a conversation we'll talk about next week. But overall in this game, I was impressed with his poise, his moxie, and his mental makeup. I think that's what makes a good quarterback, and the tools are there. So when you combine the mental aspect of Aaron Philo with the tools, it's a project for Chris Winkie and Buster Faulkner to work with. And I don't mean that in a negative light. I mean that you see why they wanted to go get him out of Prince Avenue, because they felt like he had that. He had the right mentality. He really does align with the play style of Haynes King as well. And I think that's, in my opinion, where you have to go with this. I think that's where you have to go with this. That's just my thoughts here on a Thursday night. Instant reaction. We're all processing this. Running the ball wise, Jamal Haynes, 13 carries for 36 yards. It is what it is. Shout out to Eric Singleton and Bailey Stockton. I mean, that's kind of been your 1-2 punch. Malik Rutherford had the catch for 5 yards. But Bailey Stockton, I mean, you can tell that there's chemistry there between he and Philo. There's a comfortability aspect. I think a lot of people don't understand that, in terms of you got a quarterback. If you're a receiver, the quarterback's tendencies. When he rolls out what he wants to do. You can adjust to certain routes. You can adjust to when he extends the play, which Philo has the capability to do. Eric Singleton Jr. was targeted 10 times in this game. 10 times. He had 5 catches. Outstanding game. He passed the century mark, 5 for 106, no touchdown, no passing touchdowns, like I said in this game. But you threw for 272. Haynes King chipped in there. He had 18 yards. Obviously, the big touchdown there late in the game to put Georgia Tech up by 2 scores. So that's the positive in all of this. Okay, that's the positive. I think the 2 biggest keys that we learned tonight were when you don't play your best, you can still win a football game, and that's improvement. I know people say, well, that's not enough improvement. It is, because a lot of teams can't get away with playing like this. Now, is it large part to do to your opponent not being so great? Of course it is. But you can go out there, you can find a way to win when you don't have your A game. The second positive note I'm taking away from this game is Aaron Philo. He's a gamer. He's a baller. You got a lot to work with in terms of his development into the offseason. Let's talk about the negative here, because this to me was I don't understand. I'll say this. I'm going to give a pass to the offense. I'm going to do that. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't think that there are issues. This team suffers so much from not having Haynes King in the game. They suffer so much from not having his ability, and you see glimpses of it with Philo, but Philo is also a true freshman, so you can't compare what you want to see out of Haynes King to what you would like to see immediately from Aaron Philo. It's closer than it was with Zach Pyron, but it's just different. So I'm going to give a pass to the offense in the sense that I just don't think they're good enough. I just don't think they have the personnel to overcome the lack of the consistency of the quarterback position, and a lot of teams don't have that. And so it's not a knock on Georgia Tech in the grand scheme of things, but I think it is something that when you look at just in terms of what this team's identity is, they really, really have to hang their hat on Haynes King. Now, maybe some of that shifted in this game with Aaron Philo at the quarterback position, but you really kind of seen the run game in general just kind of go away. Philo had to, really do some things with his arm, and then obviously they ran. I mean, I don't know what the heck NC State's defense was doing on that last drive. They literally were running four verts, like Dan Mullen was saying on the broadcast, and then he would just take off and run. I mean, it was interesting. So I just don't think that I don't think all the personnel's there for them offensively to overcome the injury of Haynes King because you can't do it for 60 minutes. And you kind of you, you enter into this stage of you glimpse, you flash, and it's just that shows you how important Haynes King is to this team. And that's completely fine. Like that's completely so many other teams would struggle with that. I'll just say that. So there's that aspect, and I'm not even really mad at the offense. It's just one of those things where like interior offensive line play just hasn't been where it was last year. The tackle Corey Robinson and like guys, they've been good this year. It is what it is at this point. You're not going to change anything. 11 games into the college football season, you kind of are who you are. Defensively, and I will say this, I did feel like it was flat. I feel like, and I'll get that to a second in terms of the team, but defensively, you played a quarterback who wasn't comfortable throwing the football, was not comfortable staying inside the pocket. And shout out to Dave Doran and the staff because when you saw them get more comfortable, they moved him around or allowed him to kind of progress to 1 to 2 reads and take off. And that currently in his development, that goes with his game. That's in my opinion, that's what he's tailored towards right now in terms of his quarterback development. The two biggest things when I'm watching this game that are just disappointing in terms of defensively is there's a lack of great speed on this defense. There's a lack of consistently staying in your lane, and a lot of that is due to the improvisation of what they're able to do at the quarterback position. But you kind of saw like when NC State started to get the run game going, it was really hard for Georgia Tech to pull back on the rope defensively. That to me is kind of what was frustrating in that sense on the defensive side of the football. I think there's things they could clean up, but once again, I think we talk about could they clean it up? I don't think you're 11 games into the season. You probably just are who you are. There's nobody else walking through that door. Back to what I said offensively, like you have Aaron Philo at the quarterback position, and some people are going to be ready to anoint him the second coming of Jesus Christ. You did that with your backup quarterback 2 years ago, and you see what happened. So it's cool in the moment, but it's like, okay, you're probably getting closer to where you want to be, but there's a difference between a guy who's played college football for 4 or 5 years and a guy in Aaron Philo who's 11 games into his college career. So that too is a big talking point. But defensively here, you just got out of sorts and you couldn't pull back on the rope at times. 22 points in that third quarter, 200 or in the fourth quarter, 208. Or I'm sorry, 22 points. Yes, in the fourth quarter. Apologies. 208 rushing yards in the second half. Like they just did what they wanted. And it wasn't exotic either. Like it's just gap integrity and discipline. And part of it too is you got blown off the ball at times. Now, look, you made some key plays, you forced some turnovers, but it's just one of those things where you didn't play. You played aggressive, but you over pursued at times. And that's what got you in trouble. And look, I think that they've been solid at times this year. They've been good at times this year. It's just one of those things where, I mean, for lack of better words, you got out of sorts. It was hard to pull back on the rope. What was the reason for that? I don't know. You could attribute to a lot of things. Did they come out flat? Did they overlook NC State? I don't know why they would have, because this doesn't seem like a coaching staff that, well, I'll take that back. But, it is one of those things where you had to pull back on the rope, and you did it. Maybe I don't even know if you did it in time. Like they sputtered offensively, you sputtered offensively. They kind of caught fire, and you couldn't really stop them. And it was just kind of this downhill momentum. Now, obviously, like we talked about, and you were able to make a play and put yourself into position for doing that. But it is what it is. They had a good offensive game plan in terms of that. They were able to execute and made some adjustments, and there you go. There you go. Now you end up with a win. That's all that matters, right? What happens next for this team? And I think that's like the big talking point of what you need to go into next. Do you start Aaron Philo in the next game? Do you, start Haynes King in the 2 quarterback system? I mean, like, I just got to go out and say this. Like, there's no way that Haynes King's going to be fully healthy at any point in this regular season. Now, people could have told you that back in the Notre Dame game. They could have said, all these different things. But I just kind of sit here and I'm like, I think you go with Aaron Philo. Like, I think that's who you go with. And you just see what happens, because obviously he provides a spark for this offense. We'll talk more about that next week when we get behind enemy lines with our good friend Palmer Toms, and we obviously take a preview into the game, and we'll be at the game. So I think there's a lot of aspects to this that you can take away. Like I mentioned, the positive things for me. 1, you found a way to win a game where you didn't bring your A-plus effort. It's not something you could have said previously very consistently. It is what it is. The second thing is you saw Aaron Philo grow up, and he took a good step in development, both in the mental and the physical here. The negative part, I'm a little disappointed that you came out flat like this on a bye week. Is it a personnel problem? Is it an injury problem? It is what it is. Here's the thing. Everybody has injuries. And so I think it's a personnel issue in the fact that you've got to keep building depth. And it's not like this daunting thing, because a lot of people like to get offended around this fan base when you say something that's true but negative. It just shows you that, hey, you're continuing to grow. You're continuing to grow as a program. So that's what you have to do. A little disappointed in the fact they came out that flat. And then obviously the disappointment was just the defense in general. I mean, you got out of sorts, and you can't praise things when they go really, really well, but then just say, oh, well, that's not a big deal. Because it's happened multiple times this season. It's happened. So I think it'll be interesting to see. We'll see what happens. 7-4, you roll into Georgia. I will say this: I don't think they come out flat in Athens, and I don't really understand why they came out flat in this game. But I don't think they come out flat. I think they come out swinging, because you have to. You're on the road. It's going to be a good environment, and you see what happens, and you just lay all your cards out there. You're in a bowl game. There's no worry about getting to a bowl game. Just you're trying to take one of the giants in the sport down, and so you see what you can do. Come out swinging, be aggressive, take some shots. You've shown that Philo's a little more comfortable with the deep ball, and we'll see what happens. But as for this game, I wanted to get into one more stat that I had here, because I thought this was, pretty telling, I guess we could say. Big plays, both teams actually matched each other. 11 big plays, which is 20 yards or more in the passing game, 10 yards or more in the running game. They were nearly even. They actually were identical there. In another thing, too, the deep passing. NC State benefited a lot in the short passing game, where they were 11 of 17 on passes under 5 yards. It was a lot of check down stuff. It was a lot of let your athletes move around, which, look, young quarterback, that's what they wanted to do. That's completely what it was. The deep passing, they were just 1 of 6. They did not have a lot of success. I believe the only deep pass they completed was that absolute missile off the right arm of Bailey and, on the final drive there. So, look, you made some explosive plays. You did what you need to do. Last thing I'm going to leave you with. The disappointment level of the offense, though, I think, is you come out of the bye week and it just doesn't look any different. And you can't tell me that NC State has an elite defense. I respect Dave Doran as a head coach. But I think you do have to look in the mirror and say, like, okay, you come out flat after the bye week. Offensively, like, we can keep talking about the injury situation. Everyone has injuries, and I think it's what I said. Like, it's a personnel thing. Like, it's just personnel all the way around. You don't have enough to mask the quarterback being out. And that's okay. Like, you were able to get away with it in this game. A lot of teams don't have that. And it just shows you that when you get into the portal, get into the high school, you really have to be good on your evaluations. You've got to continue to build up depth at different positions that can help out. And they did in this game. And I think that's a big piece. You saw Philo grow up, and I absolutely love that as well. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to keep talking about college football all week next week. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. A great way to start off the weekend, too. ACC football on a Thursday night, a lot of fun. And we will catch you next time, though, here on Swarm Talk, brought to you by the Crowded Booth. NC State falls to Georgia Tech, 7-4. There you go, fellas. 7-4, 1 win away from 8. Can you? I told you this. If you could get to 8-5, if you could get to 8 wins, bowl winner included, that's going to do a lot for the program. Going to do really, really a lot for our program. We'll see you next time here on the Crowded Booth. Thanks so much for watching.